You think I think too much now? I don't think enough. I need to think way more than I do. So if that's you out there, number one, you're not alone. Number two, please do not allow it to dim your light, because the thing that turns many, many people off is also going to turn the right people on, proverbially.
If anything, I think all of us would benefit from thinking more. Seriously, I think that that's what this podcast was built on. Change the way you think, change the way you act, change the way you live. Thinking can change your whole life.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode number 1472, questions that will save you a lot of time. Today, for episode number 1471, you think too much. And that is in quotes. I'm not saying you think too much, but if you are anything like Alan and myself, maybe you have been told that you think too much on one or several occasions. I remember back in the day, Alan, when I was spending more time on Snapchat. I was a single man.
I remember. You used to Snapchat me. We had a streak.
Yeah, we did.
We had a streak.
Did I break the streak?
I honestly don't know.
Probably. It's probably me. Also, real quick, for those watching, I have my lights on orange because it's almost October, which means it's almost Halloween, so I'm going to get seasonal up in here. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's preemptive, but I dig it. You're very proactive.
Alan hates it. So I
don't hate it.
I was talking to a young lady many moons ago when I was, I don't know how old I was, 20. I was still working at my old job, probably 26, 27. I don't remember. But I was talking to this young lady, and her and I were, I don't know if you would say dating. We were on the verge of dating. And I remember we hung out a few times, and it was all good. And then something happened, and we were talking, I think, on Facebook Messenger. And she said, I don't understand why you have to think so much. You think way too much. Just let it go. Let it be. And I remember saying, I don't think I think too much. I love that about myself. I love the fact that I'm always thinking and I have these weird thoughts. And that was it. After that, I think she blocked me. She blocked me on all the platforms, probably deleted my number, and we never spoke again. But now in reflection, this person, and I don't mean this in a negative way, this person had a very simple life that I think they enjoyed. They worked at a car dealership. They were a gymnastics coach. And they hung out on their free time and liked watching Disney movies and spending time with friends and going to the bar and partying a little bit. In retrospect, looking back, I just think that person was they probably felt very fulfilled in their existence, and they probably wondered why I couldn't feel fulfilled in the existence that I had. Or they thought they were fulfilled. I don't know whether they were or not. But I've heard that before. You think too much, you should think less. You don't have to think about that. It doesn't matter. It's not that big of a deal. Just let it be. And in this episode, I want you to know that if anybody has ever told you that, I think they're wrong. And what if they just don't think enough? And that is obviously personal. It depends on the level of goals and what they want out of life. But just because you think more than the average bear, as many of the amazing people on our team would say, it doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's wrong. What if that's what differentiates you from everyone else? What if that's your unique superpower? What if that's going to allow you to create the life of your dreams, and others that are not thinking that way aren't going to get the life that they want? So I thought we could do an episode on it. I know you've heard it, Alan. I've heard it. I'm sure whether you're watching or listening, unfortunately, you've probably heard it as well. What did you do with it would be my question, and did you allow it to switch or shift your identity?
I don't know what year this was, but I will never forget the very first personal development book I ever purchased. And it was this little book right here. I'm on YouTube, I'm showing it.
It is little, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little one. John C. Maxwell, the title of the book is How Successful People Think. Change your thinking, change your life. Now, it wasn't until you were talking, literally, just now, Kev, that I realized that the motto of this book, which I picked up at Barnes & Noble probably back in 2009, I want to say, 2008, something like that. Way, way, way back. Didn't read it right away. I think I was intrigued by the title, How Successful People Think. Change your thinking, change your life. Now, for the new listeners of ours, we had a podcast originally that was called, well, I had a podcast called Conversations Change Lives. Kevin had a podcast called The Hyper Conscious Podcast. And his slogan was, change the way you think, change the way you act, change the way you live. And I'm realizing, right? World class?
That was a big deal. I was a big deal. I'm going to say it. I'm going to come out and say it. One of the top podcasts of all time I created. 2017.
We're on our way. 2017. Isn't it wild how that's like not that long ago?
But also it's going to be 7 years. April of 2017, this podcast journey began. We are 5 months, 6 months away from that. From being
so we will be 7 years.
We'll be 7 years old.
Like a little toddler. No.
I don't know.
What is it? Young adult? I don't know. It's
no.
Baby. It's like infant, toddler. There's something in between teenager and toddler.
I have
right?
no clue. I couldn't.
Me neither.
You could say anything, and I would say yes.
As a business, as a podcast, as an enterprise, we are going to be 7 years old in 6 months.
Yeah.
In 6 months, we're going to be. That's like saying, hey, my birthday's coming up. It's like 6 months later. But anyways, so How Successful People Think, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life is the slogan of the very first personal development book I ever bought. And I still have it. It's right here. It's this little tiny book by John Maxwell. But the idea here is I've been told you think too much my entire life. And I remember my response to that was always, I don't understand why you're saying that. If anything, I think thinking is what separates us from animals. And I was joking with Kev behind the scenes before we did this episode. I said, what's the difference between you and your dog? The dog really can't think that much. They have to go on instinct. Now, dogs can think a little bit, I'm sure, right? Food, water, whatever, right? I want to play. I have a little dog named Tucker. But the difference between a smartphone and a regular phone is the smartphone is more capable. You can do more on it. It's connected to the internet. It has apps. I think intelligence, I think thinking is what separates us. I've always felt that way. And the last story that I'll share here real quick is, if you listen to Kevin and I, you probably have been told that you think too much. I have a lot of clients who have told me they've been told they think too much. When in reality, what if the other person thinks too little? That's the thesis here. Now, the story that I have is when I was in my early 20s, my mom came up to me and she said, why do you care so much about intelligence? Like, why does that matter so much? Why can't it be enough to just be nice? And I remember at the time, I genuinely didn't understand what she was trying to say. I didn't get it. And it was a little bit of an attack. But I remember saying, because intelligence is the most important thing. And she said, well, why? Why does that matter so much? And I said, because if you don't have intelligence, you can't make good choices. That's what you taught me. My mom told me that if you aim high, you'll have choices. Education matters so much. And the conclusion that I drew back then, I want to share with our listeners, because when I was in my early 20s, I was reflecting on my childhood. I've always been doing that. I actually just did that last night too. But I looked around and I saw really unfulfilled people. And this is not me trying to be unkind. This is me just being an observant child, okay? I saw a lot of people who had unfulfilling jobs. They had unfulfilling relationships. My mom and stepdad didn't really get along well. All their friends didn't seem to get along very well. No one seemed that happy to me. No one seemed that fulfilled. Most people didn't like their jobs. And it just, I remember my brain as a little kid, I remember thinking, I'm gonna do something different. I'm not gonna do this. This looks terrible. And again, now as a almost 35-year-old man, I now understand that I grew up in a neighborhood that was a lot of people that weren't very fulfilled and certainly not into personal development. And that's whatever, okay? But what I told my mom, this was my 20-year-old ego version of what I told her, which was, I'm trying to find the formula to not end up old and miserable like everybody else. And that's not to imply that everyone's miserable. But back when I was a kid, I looked around and I was around a lot of unhappy people. And Kevin and I, ever since we got together, we've been having deep talks from the very beginning. We've been you and I were in Pittsburgh 4 or 5 weeks ago, and you were asking me some really interesting questions at the end of the night. Really, really trippy questions. They were great. But you've never once heard me say, dude, you think too much. You'll never hear me say that, because if anything, I think all of us would benefit from thinking more. Seriously. I think that that's what this podcast was built on. Change the way you think, change the way you act, change the way you live. Thinking can change your whole life. And whether it's how successful people think, or it's this podcast, or it's a conversation with a friend or a mentor, changing the way you think will change the way you act. It will change the choices you make, and the choices you make will change your life. And it's the most empowering thing in the world.
I wonder if being an overthinker it's been considered negative in the past, because maybe when you think about overthinking, you're also thinking lack of action. So if you overthink and you underact, you're going to get stuck in a loop. But what if you overthink and you act fast? I would argue that's probably a pretty good place to live. I look back on my past, and I do this often, and there's a lot of things that I would overthink. I remember, and I don't want this to be like a too much information thing, but I remember when I was first dating and having long-term girlfriends, how safe I was when we were participating in sexual activities. I'll just leave it at that. But I was overthinking all the things that could go wrong all the time. I was terrified. I was obsessed with overthinking. I remember when I started drinking, I never got behind the wheel of a car after I drank, ever. Because I was always overthinking, what are the odds something bad happens? I feel like they're probably pretty high. I don't know if anybody makes a terrible decision based on their awareness, gets home and says, yeah, I'm very unlucky that I didn't get in an accident or get pulled over. I think it's the opposite. They say, wow, I'm really lucky I made it home in one piece. Which means the odds are against you when it comes to something like that. If I could go back and tell younger Kevin something, 18-year-old Kevin, I would probably say, hey, dude, think more. Think more and act more. But it starts with thinking more. It's not a weakness. It's not a sickness. It's not something, it's also not something that's going to be understood by everybody, but that's okay. That's okay. Even when I started the story, we started this episode with that story. Good for that young lady for figuring out what she wants and doing that. I would argue that I will be more fulfilled. I would argue that I am more fulfilled right now, and I will continue to be more fulfilled. And I think one of the reasons is I said, what would fulfill me? That's overthinking. Or thinking, getting to a point where I remember Alan and I were trying to do things very similarly, and I was coaching, and I was doing mindset coaching and all this other stuff, and thinking, well, I don't know if I want to do this forever. I don't know if I think that's Alan's thing. I think Alan's way better at this than I am. I like podcasting. I want to talk about podcasting. I want to coach on podcasting. What if I didn't overthink there? And what if I didn't overthink when we went from hyperconscious to next level you? What if I didn't overthink there? And right now we're in the middle of doing a rebrand. We're going to have a new logo and stuff because we've been thinking about that for a long time, and the team has given us a good kick in the butt, so I'm grateful for all of you. But that's based on overthinking. It's almost like you get to a point where your level of thinking gets you to the level that you're at, and if you stop thinking, you stay at that level.
Next Level University and Kevin is exactly where you need to be if you're a podcaster. When I first started out just a few months ago, I had no clue on the direction I was going. I was getting hustled by another company that was giving me not even close to the value that Kevin and Next Level U was giving me. They literally changed the trajectory of my podcast, have helped me out tremendously. They understand the clients. I promise you, you will not go wrong with dealing with Kevin and Next Level U. I'll see you there.
Thinking is creating. It's curiosity. I don't know if you can be too curious. You can be too curious for someone who finds curiosity intimidating or they just don't understand it. But going back to an episode that we've done before, and it's kind of the through line of this entire podcast, you're not for everyone. There are some people who would love to hang out with you on a Friday night and talk about weird stuff like Alan and I, for sure. There are also other people who might say, hey, man, or hey, that's too much. I can't think about that right now. I don't want to think about that. maybe they're just not as much your people as you had hoped. But the last thing I ever want you to do is take a reaction from someone else as the way you should live your life, especially take a reaction from someone else and it makes you feel bad about yourself. What it really did for me when that young lady sent me that message, it was like, oh, this was never going to work anyway. You think I think too much now? I don't think enough. I need to think way more than I do. So if that's you out there, number one, you're not alone. Number two, please do not allow it to dim your light, because the thing that turns many, many people off is also going to turn the right people on, proverbially, not in a sexual manner here.
Kev, I was thinking about thinking and just now, and I think we don't always know this, but thinking is asking and answering questions. It's also known as contemplation. So Kev and I are always asking each other questions behind the scenes. I mean, it's 3:33 p.m. on Monday. What's today? September 27th or something?
September 25th, son.
September 25th. While we're recording this, Kevin and I, on this Monday, have accomplished nothing tangible.
How dare you?
But we discussed, let's go through it real quick. We discussed audio quality. We discussed business.
Mm-hmm.
We discussed sales. We discussed how to get more clients. We discussed habits. We discussed what to discuss. We came up with episode topics. We sent an audio to the team, so I guess we did actually accomplish something tangible. We contemplated the logo. We had 3 different options for the new podcast avatar. All day today, Kevin and I have been from 10:30 a.m. to 3:33 p.m. We've been contemplating what to do next, what the next chapter looks like, what we can do to improve the audio quality, what can we do to improve the business, what can we do to gain more momentum, what can we do to help this person or that person, what can I do, whether or not I'm going to do trial clients ever again. We've just been contemplating. We've just gotten in a room together and we've just contemplated. The power of contemplation, the power of thinking, the power of asking and answering tough questions is that now you can make better choices. I've used this 1,000 times in speeches. Everyone think of a really bad decision that you made in high school. Everyone's got one. When you were a teenager, think of a really terrible choice that you would never make again. Okay? Kevin's got one. I've got one. Okay, why would you never make that choice again? Now, the answer is because you're now wiser. In other words, you are now more aware of the long-term consequences of that potential choices. In other words, that potential choice. You are more aware of the risk. You're more aware of the risk. The one that I'm thinking of, I'm really, really, really grateful that what could have happened didn't end up happening. Whether it was dangerous or reckless. The point is I'm just more wise now. Teenagers don't know that much. Nothing against teenagers. I was one too. I made reckless choices for sure. And I'm very, very fortunate that those choices did not end up derailing my life. And thinking is asking and answering questions. Asking and answering questions is the key to making better choices. And at Next Level University, whether it was Hyperconscious Podcast, Change the Way You Think, Change the Way You Act, Change the Way You Live, or it's Next Level University, Level Up Your Health, Wealth, Life, and Love, what we're doing on this podcast is helping you think. We always are, we always have been, and we always will be. And that's the difference between you and your dog. And that's the difference between a smartphone and a dumb phone. A smartphone and a non-smartphone. But I've always believed deeply in thinking. I don't know if that's unique to me or not, but I think it's really, really, really important. And I do know that most of what Kevin and I's life has become, our impact has become, our business has become, our podcast has become, our relationships, our intimate relationships have become, is a byproduct of deep conversations thinking about better ways to be better men, to be better leaders, to be better business owners, to be better partners. That's what it's all about. And it all comes back to this one book that I picked up at Barnes & Noble, How Successful People Think. And by success, it means health, wealth, love. It means being effective. It means being what you want to be. Would the little version of you, the childhood version of you, be super proud of who you are today? And if your answer is yes, it's because what's the difference between the little version of you and you now is now you're wiser. Now you have more experiences. Now you have more answers, you have more understandings, you have more capabilities. You're smarter, you're wiser. It's because we all, as human beings, can think better and then therefore do better. I used to say, you have to know better to do better. So whatever that thing was in high school, you didn't know any better, maybe. Now you do. So now you would never do that thing again, right? So now the question is, what are we doing now that 5 years from now is going to think we shouldn't have been doing? Or more importantly, what are we not doing now that 5 years from now we're going to wish we had?
If you see something in the physical world, it's because someone was thinking about it. So if you feel like you're overthinking, maybe you're underacting. You're probably not. I don't know if you're overthinking. I mean, yeah, that definitely happens. But one of the best ways to overthink, or one of the best ways to combat overthinking is to act more. Because then you get more feedback and it allows you to have a more accurate understanding of what you're thinking. Last thing before we go. Did you know, and keep it real with me, don't lie about this, okay? Because I'll know if you lie.
Okay.
Okay? Did you know?
I'm a man of truth, my friend.
I know that.
To a
trust
detriment.
me. I know that. I know that. Did you know that I had a typewriter as a child?
No. I did not know that.
I did. Before we got a laptop. Before we got a computer.
I think my grandma had one. Those things are awesome, man.
Did you know? Have you ever heard of web TV?
Mm-mm.
What a wild thing this was. Okay, real quick. Every day so we used to have this thing called web TV. It was this keyboard that attached to your TV. And
yeah. Way back.
You could
way
like
back.
send emails.
I thought I accidentally almost bought a house when the internet was brand new.
What?
I was at my mom and papa's house, and I was a little kid, and I went and looked at real estate online.
Okay.
And I was scared that I accidentally bought a house. I was like 6 years old or something.
So you had web TV as well?
Yeah, they did. My grandma.
Shout out to grandma and grandpa. I would get home every day from school, and I would send my girlfriend at the time. We're talking like middle school, so this wasn't a legitimate girlfriend. But I would send her love notes on web TV. My mom and grandmother would help me. They'd help
I
me.
would pay money to see those.
They were probably world class.
What do you think you were saying, man?
Good stuff, definitely.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it was probably super uplifting. It was positive, definitely positive.
I don't doubt that.
Teddy bears, yeah. I've always had I've always been a man of many thoughtful words.
Quick story.
Go on.
Really fast.
Yeah, sure.
In middle school on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
I remember one time I got $50.
Somebody gave you $50?
Yeah. I used to get candy in my locker. I was the blonde-haired, blue-eyed. I looked like a Backstreet Boy, like a little mini Backstreet Boy.
Goodness.
And I got $50 once.
Who was stashing who's on the $50 bill? Jackson?
But I remember feeling pretty guilty about that. I took the money, but
yeah, of course, as any child
would. Do you like me? Yes or no? You remember those notes with like the checkbox? Yes or no?
I don't think I got many of them. I don't know. I feel like I was a little teddy bear in middle school. Who gave you $50? We had some questionable teachers. Could have been a teacher.
No, no, it was definitely not a teacher.
Okay.
Her name was Kaylee.
Kaylee. Shout out to Kaylee it's a lot of money. All right, we're going to get out of here. Next Level Nation, as you know, we have graduated 11 groups of group coaching over the last coming up on 3 years, which is mind-blowing to me. Our 12th round of group coaching is starting on October 10th with the discount code that we are just going to give you, and we're going to put it in the show notes because I don't want you to have to go find it or reach out to us. You can literally just copy and paste it from the show notes to the website. It'll take 30% off, and it'll end up being $96.60 per month, I believe. The code is NLU Listener. One word. NLULISTENER. We'll have it in the show notes, so you can just copy and paste. I spelled it right?
Okay. I believe so.
And if you have been waiting, if you've wanted to get into group coaching before, you haven't had time, it wasn't the right time, whatever, too busy, money was tight, now is a great opportunity. And here's the other thing too. You're going to be with us leading up to the holidays, right? We're going to be 6 weeks. Yeah. So we'll be going right up until the holiday season. That's where a lot of us fall off our habits. Summer is a slow time for a lot of people in terms of making progress. A lot of family time, children time, activities, vacation. let's get the habits rolling again so we can make progress rolling into the holiday season and New Year. Link will be in the show notes. Everything will be in the show notes. Sorry, sir.
That's all good, brother. I was going to interrupt you, not the other way around. So this weekend on Saturday, I think we had nearly 20 people on book club. So thank you all for who attended. It was magnificent. Best book club we've ever had this past weekend. We are reading a book by Jim Quick called Limitless. And the best way to describe this book is it's all the best fundamentals you can think of. He talks about motivation, methods, and mindset. Motivation, methods, and mindset. Motivation is gas in the tank. Mindset is how to make better choices, how to think better, kind of like what we talked today. And then methods is the strategies that you employ. The book is awesome. I hope that you join us Saturday, every Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's completely free. Keep your camera off and your microphone off if you want. You can just listen in. You don't have to have joined the book at any particular time or have read it or not. Some people have read it, some people haven't, some people started it, some people didn't. And you can participate as much or as little as you'd like. I highly recommend that you join us. The registration link, not the registration link, the landing page will be in the show notes.
Also, shout out to all the new NLU family members. We've gotten many, many, many listens over the last few weeks. So shout out to you. If you are new, welcome. Grateful you're here. And please, as always, let us know how we can support you. Tomorrow, for episode number 1472, how long has your biggest problem been a problem? Even that right there, you could say, Kev, that's overthinking right there. The way you titled that episode, I don't think so. I think it's a great title. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Keep on thinking. Next Level Nation.